Hello and welcome to Views on News. I'm Jawad. Tehami. Pakistan's federal capital Islamabad was rocked with a deadly suicide bombing today, which resulted in the martyrdom of one policeman and 6 people were injured, including 4 police officers and 2 civilians. Interior Minister Rana Sanaullah confirmed this, saying 2 terrorists were also killed in this particular incident. And he also said that a suspicious vehicle that entered from Rawalpindi to Islamabad was detected by the law enforcement agencies, and it was packed with explosives and it was headed for a high value target. Had it reached its target, the losses would have been heavier. The banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan has claimed the responsibility for this deadly bombing, and Islamabad police at the same time has issued a security red alert for the city. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif condemned this horrific incident in the strongest terms and has also sought a report from the concerned authorities. Prime Minister also said that we will rid the country of all such elements who are the enemies of Pakistan and the murderers of the innocent people. He has also vowed that the nation will continue its war against terrorism. At the same time, Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari and Information Minister Maryam Aurangzeb have also condemned this incident and have paid tribute to the martyrs and those personnel of the law enforcement agencies who are on the front lines in order to deal with this menace. And earlier, Foreign Minister had categorically said that TTP remains to be absolute red line for Pakistan. And he also suggested a hammer and anvil strategy to deal with this menace with the cooperation of the Afghan authorities. Earlier, Foreign Office spokesperson had said they have received the assurances from the Afghan authorities of cooperation and dealing with this particular threat. And Pakistan expects and hopes that the Afghan authorities would fulfill their commitment towards Pakistan. She also said that Pakistan remains engaged with the international partners in this regard. Earlier, we saw the United States of America expressed its unconditional support for Pakistan in its battle against banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, and also the United Nations had also called on the Afghan authorities in order to end all the terrorist activities from its soil that pose a threat to Pakistan. A short while ago, the military's media wing, Inter-Services Public Relations, has issued a statement regarding Chief of Army Staff's visit to Miranshah, North Waziristan and Tarbela. And the ISPR statement says, let me quote, that the Chief of Army Staff said that Pakistan Army remains focused on evolving security situation and determined to take the battle to the terrorists and break the nexus with their facilitators so as to ensure lasting peace through socio-economic development. Pakistan Army will consolidate the hard-earned peace made possible by the supreme sacrifices of the resilient Pakistani nation and the law enforcement agencies. Let's bring in our panelists. So we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Mr. Yasir Janjua. He's a senior analyst. Mr. Janjua, thank you very much for your time, for being on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. And on Skype, we are being joined by Mr. Hassan Khan. He's expert Afghan affairs. Mr. Hassan Khan, thank you very much for your time, also for being on Views on News. We really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, Mr. Janjua. Now, the federal capital, we have seen a surge in terrorism in recent months in Pakistan in different particular areas of the country. Especially we saw a rise in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province as well as in Balochistan. Today, the federal capital, the heart of the country, has been rocked with this particular deadly bombing, and we saw the loss of life. Indeed, the law enforcement agencies happen to be right in the front line in order to deal with this menace. Of course, salutes and tributes to them. What would you like to say regarding the role of the law enforcement agencies and the armed forces in order to deal with this menace?
Jawad, thank you very much for having me on the show. First and foremost, our law enforcement agencies are the front line of defense against terrorism. And salutes and hats off to our policemen and the armed forces who brave it and face this right there as the first people to respond or to take the brunt of it. However, I would unfortunately say, I don't tend to agree with you that there's rise in terrorism. This is the first incident in Islamabad in many, many years, maybe, if you say. I was just going through the data. In Pakistan, from the month of October to December, this is the entire country. This is the fourth incident, out of which the 3 incidents were in the restive provinces of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or the erstwhile FATA area. Now, which is not a great number, which is not a very high number technically speaking, considering we're a country of 220 million people. So, yes, there is an incident because
every single human life matters.
Every single human life, that's what I'm saying.
In the terrorist attacks, especially after the negotiations with the government authorities broke twice, and since August we have seen at least 115 attacks so far this year have been carried out.
What I'm saying is, law enforcement agencies unfortunately cannot be everywhere. There's a limit to what they can do, and they are doing their best. Armed forces are doing their best. Despite one odd sporadic, what we need to do, what the government would have to do right now or as a long-term policy, is to make institutional measures. For example, now what we see here today is this taxi drove into the city laden with bombs, or people who had bombs strapped around their bodies and they exploded themselves. It's humanly not possible to stop every car in Islamabad or any city and check it for the law enforcement agencies. Either there will have to be technological measures at every entry point whereby every car is scanned, and that's not, for a country like Pakistan, that may not be possible. However, what can be done, I mean, we have to talk of realistic steps. What can be done and should be done is, for example, like it's happening in so many other countries, the car registration system, the vehicles that become taxi operators, that has to be streamlined and stringently enforced. Secondly, like for example, there is in UAE, there is a real estate registration or regulatory authority. Real estate sector has to be regulated well and proper, whereby every house that is rented or bought, the law enforcement agencies know exactly who's living there. And we as people, we should know who our neighbors are, and the law enforcement should know. So when these measures are taken, we can curtail those crimes right before they happen, because they would have taken. When the guys come out on the road, I mean, yes, we should do, and the government is trying to do as much as it can, but one odd incident would happen, and unfortunately today we lost a life here.
Don't you think the major question should be that since we had the hard-earned gains and successes in the war on terror, and Pakistan had to pay huge prices in that regard, the major question remains to be why even one attack in the federal capital or the other attacks in the other provinces are happening after we defeated terrorism once for all, and there were decisive operations that were carried out. So there must be some reason behind that, because these operations or these terrorist activities which these militants are carrying out, they are being carried out from the Afghan soil. So those people, the infiltration rather, should be checked.
See, if you have to look at this, the menace of terrorism, you see that the terrorist methodologies, they are going through the ups and downs. So sometimes they would go into hibernation. So if you don't see anything happening, we say, okay, we have done it once for all, we've taken. There is no once for all situation. Why? Because you always have to remain on the guard, because the enemy is out there. Yes, they've gone into hibernation, that's a different story. So they hibernate for some months, sometimes few months.
Weren't they flushed away and they took refuge on the Afghan soil?
So when they go out to the Afghan soil, we think we've flushed everybody out, but you have technically not done that. They can always come back, and when the negotiations fail between the government and the Taliban, there always is a fear. Even if there is complete silence, sometimes their demands are not met. What you just saw a few days ago happened in counter-terrorism department in Bannu. They took hostages. So these kind of incidents, they will come, because if you've arrested some people, they will try and come in. Now, this looks like apparently is a consequence of what happened in Bannu, because they took hostage, we sent the SSG, we took them down, and they wanted to give a message of revenge. That's why what you've seen today is that they've operated against the federal government.
Right. Let me bring in Mr. Hassan Khan into the discussion also. Mr. Hassan Khan, clearly there's been a surge in terrorist activities in various parts of the country. Today, the federal capital has been rocked. There has been a loss of life also, strongly condemned by the top officials in the country. And the nation remains determined to defeat this menace once for all. First of all, the kind of immense sacrifices the law enforcement agencies and the armed forces are making in this regard. What do you have to say about that?
There is no doubt in this fact that Pakistan security establishment and police force, whether it is of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or Islamabad, they are offering, our Balochistan, they are offering their ultimate sacrifices to secure the country. But unfortunately, look, I agree with Mr. Janjua that countering terrorism, it needs a holistic approach. It is not only the policeman standing guard at the checkpost and he is not able, he can't.
Unfortunately,
I think we need to go beyond. Look, Islamabad is hit today. The country capital is hit by the terrorists. Unfortunately, we, the people of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, they were talking of the incoming of terrorism, of militancy since last 2-3 months, because they were the first who were exposed to this wave of terrorism. Khyber Pakhtunkhwa suffered almost 120 terrorist attacks during the last 1 year. And when people of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa were crying and they were saying that what's going on, please stop it, take some measure. So, you know, the famous statement of spokesperson of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa government, Barrister Saib, when he was asked about the terrorist activities in Jawad, he said that no, there is nothing. And the federal interior minister, he also downplayed it and said that these are exaggerated, and that was very unfortunate. Even today, look, the country capital is hit, and I think when Khyber Pakhtunkhwa was burning, when the merged districts were in the grip of the militancy, so I think people in Islamabad or elsewhere, they were pretty confident that maybe the waters of Indus are so deep that it will not let the terrorists cross into the mainland Pakistan. And even today, look, Pakistan's central capital, its capital city is hit by the terrorists, and I don't see any activities on part of our political leadership. We are still engaged in a frivolous discussion on whether a provincial assembly of a province may be dissolved or not dissolved.
So, Mr. Hassan Khan, what I understand from your
session of the Senate was called only to condemn and to talk about it, that what's going on in Pakistan, what's going on in Islamabad. So I think instead of just paying customary sentences to our security boys, to our police boys who are suffering today, a young police officer, he led his life to secure me and you and our. So I think this is a collective responsibility. We need to come up with a holistic policy instead of just firefighting that today it happened and tomorrow there will be a business as usual.
Right, Mr. Hassan Khan, what I understand, this particular current threat now requires the political maturity from all the political stakeholders and their unity in order to deal with this common threat together. And holistic policy regarding that one needs to be chalked out and implemented in letter and spirit. What needs to be done? We saw that after the deadly APS 2014 attack, there was a national consensus evolved and a national action plan was formed. And later on, we saw back in the last year in 2021, it was also revisited. So what needs to be done in order to revive it, or to revisit it more in order to make it more comprehensive and implement it in letter and spirit?
Yeah, I think this is a very pertinent question. And I think this question shall have been discussed National Assembly of Pakistan. I think only thing we can manage. Look, today every political leaders was just sending condemnation statements that they condemn the terrorists. Everybody is condemning the terrorists. I think no civilized person will say what the terrorists have done was a marvelous job. I think it was an act to be condemned. But beyond that, we need to set and come up with a policy, right? After the attack on the APS, where small kids were butchered ruthlessly. So I think all the entire political leadership sat together and they come up with a policy called National Action Plan. And you know, the day, I think even the mud of the grave of those young kids were yet wet when we forgotten, we totally forget the National Action Plan. I think we need to be a bit serious about it. I think Pakistan is turning out to be a tragedy. If this is our behavior, that we only react when there is an action by the terrorists. We react only. I think everybody was aware when the situation changed in Afghanistan, when the Afghan Taliban were least cared about the terrorist, the anti-Pakistan element in Afghanistan. They were day in and day out calling it a Pakistan internal policy. So what policy we come up with? I think neither we stand. Look at the CTD attack. The CTD compound was taken over by the terrorists, and you know, later on the reports come the status of the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa counter-terror department. So I think this is what we have done.
So Mr. Hassan Khan, Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari has categorically said that TTP remains to be the absolute red line for Pakistan, and we are ready to consider each and every single option to ensure the safety and the security of our people. He has also suggested towards a hammer and anvil strategy. How this particular strategy can be implemented, what needs to be done in that regard?
I think before going beyond border, and yes, everybody know that the TTP are stationed in Afghanistan. They are living free. They have more resources now, and they and first we all act all our acts, let those be made together. All the political parties, whether the oppositions or the government parties, there shall be a debate. What shall be the policy? The policy shall be, I think, first we have to strengthen our police network, and especially in the border districts like the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan. I think that is because police are the first responders. You can't manage this wave of terrorism by having a kinetic operations like sending the troops, military troops and tanks and jet fighters, etc. I think it needs the law enforcement agencies, especially the police and the intelligence work. Look at the threat of NACTA. This National Counter-Terrorism Authority was formed in 2014. And I think just we have to look into its performance, what it has done. After facing another wave of terrorism, which I believe when we were asking people in Islamabad, they were saying that it is an irritant, it is a disruptive force, it is not a big threat. But today we are talking that TTP is posing a serious threat to Pakistan. So I think we need to set and chart out a policy internally, and then how to deal, how to take on the Afghan Taliban. And look at the behavior of Afghan Taliban. I think we need not to expect too much from them. They have taken on the whole
Mr.
world.
Hassan
Look at
Khan,
their risk.
beg your pardon for the interruption. I'll come back to you with this particular very important point that you have just started to highlight, the responsibility of the Afghan Taliban. Now, Mr. Janjua, when it comes to Foreign Minister Bilal Bhutto Zardari suggesting that we should be going for the hammer and anvil strategy and with the cooperation of the Afghan authorities, what does that mean? How can it be implemented, and what sort of a cooperation we can expect from the interim Afghan government?
Well, the kind of cooperation that we expect from interim Afghan government is that they should not, they have made a pledge though, and they've been doing that in the last many months since they've come to power, that they will not let the Afghan soil be used for terrorist operations or terrorism against Pakistan. However, we have been saying this in the previous programs as well, and the government also knows that the Afghan Taliban have pockets within Afghanistan where they have no control, or the local warlords, they are independently operating and sometimes not abiding by the commitments of the central leadership from Kabul. And that is why they are providing harbors or safe havens to terrorists who are crossing from Pakistan. In the last few days, we've also seen some fences being taken away by the Afghans where they've tried to dismantle the Pak-Afghan border fence, which facilitates people to infiltrate from the Afghan soil. So as much as the Afghan Taliban, we might say, are cooperating or committing to cooperate, that cooperation is physically deficient or not as per what we expect. Now, we should always be wary that Afghan Taliban do not have that capacity. There's an issue of capacity, what they can do, because they are a group of warlords who have joined up. Sometimes the local warlord would not probably agree to their central leadership. And that is where the problem comes when we have infiltration coming into Pakistan. Now, having said that, what I want to emphasize is...
But they took the responsibility as per the promise they made, particularly in the Doha peace deal. And then there were Troika plus talks also that also emphasized for the Afghan Taliban to take care of that very commitment of not allowing the Afghanistan soil to be used against any neighboring country in particular.
They did, but despite that, we've seen the fence being taken away. What I'm trying to say is it's an issue of capacity. So why should we, this is what I'm trying to emphasize, why should we rely on a foreign government to ensure peace in our country? Yes, they have a responsibility to do that, but if they're not fulfilling that or they are not capable to do that, we have to do some measures to do it ourselves.
Border fencing was a gigantic step in order to check that infiltration of such elements. So Pakistani authorities did a remarkable job regarding that particular border fencing as well. But despite that, the Afghan authorities, or there are certain elements from within the ranks of the Afghan Taliban that remain adamant about this particular border fencing, and they make an issue of it. How to engage with them and impress upon them that this is actually the requirement for the regional stability. As the Foreign Office spokesperson says, that we remain engaged with the Afghan authorities, and let me quote her, that Pakistan's prioritizes dialogue and finding constructive solutions. That has always been our policy, and we also want to find constructive solution to the current situation that we are facing through dialogue. So how to engage with the Afghan authorities and make them realize that something needs to be done in order to ensure the regional stability?
Well, the only way to engage with them is dialogue. Unfortunately, the rest of the world has not yet even recognized this issue, that they want to live with the new Afghan government. Pakistan is among the few countries which is still engaged with Afghans. The time is such that everyone in the global community has to realize this, that the Afghan Taliban is a reality now. So if we bring them on board and bring them onto that discussion table, we will get better cooperation from them. If we push them against the wall, the Taliban is not going to help. Pakistan only has one option, that is dialogue with the Taliban, the Afghan Taliban. And this is why we even tried to talk to the TTP as well. But TTP would not surrender or would make demands which the government of Pakistan would never accept. So this is why we have been flexible. The government of Pakistan and the armed forces have been very flexible
to give peace a chance, to give dialogue a chance. But that
Taliban,
has broken twice.
TTP,
the TTP broke it twice.
Yes.
Now, their demands are not going to be met by Pakistani authorities, of course, which don't come under the ambit of the constitution of Pakistan. So then what remains to be the option to deal with this TTP threat in particular? We'll be talking about the negotiations or the dialogue with the Afghan authorities.
See, the negotiation is at the strategic level, right? At the government to government level. And then there are military operations, the military solution, especially in the areas close to the Afghan belt. That is where we need to stop them. We can't be reactive when they come into the cities and then we try to stop them. We'll stop one, we'll stop two, but there's going to be one terrorist who's going to just walk in and maybe explode himself. So that's the reactive mode. When I said about those things, that about now we need to do policing in a different way whereby we become proactive. Dialogues, okay, dialogue is the only way, but dialogues will somehow not remove this threat completely. There will always be, because assuming this, that the TTP is not completely under the control of the Afghan Taliban as well. This is where the problem comes in.
But they expressed their pledge of allegiance to the Afghan Taliban.
The TTP would say, yes, we what else do, they can't operate in a silo. So they had to be on either side. So for them, the best case scenario was that
when they express their pledge of their allegiance to the Afghan Taliban, at the same time, they call themselves to be the branch of Afghan Taliban on Pakistani territory. Now, once we see there are assurances, which the Foreign Office has also said, by the Afghan authorities, that Afghan soil won't be used to destabilize Pakistan.
So that means,
so where is the difference?
So the difference is that the Afghan government or if the Afghan Taliban says, we make a commitment that our soil will not be used. TTP says we're showing our allegiance to the Afghan Taliban. But then the disconnect is that probably they are not listening to the Afghan Taliban as well.
So it means that Afghan Taliban need to...
They are not doing enough. There is lack of commitment on their part.
Mr. Hassan Khan, what's your take regarding this? So there is a difference and there is a disconnect. What happens to be the responsibility of the Afghan Taliban if the TTP is not even listening to those authorities towards which they have pledged their allegiance?
No, I think I have a bit of disagreement here that Afghan Taliban can't control them. Even Afghan Taliban have so far not condemned their attacks inside Pakistan. The reason is that Afghan Taliban are more in alliance with their brother in arms, like these militants who were together for almost 20 years. They fought together. The TTP was a handout for them. Through TTP, they collected funds, etc. So today, Afghan Taliban are more close to these militant networks in Pakistan instead of the government of Pakistan. One, two. Yes, Afghan Taliban may not have the capacity so far, but they don't have the will to act against the TTP or the IMU or the ETIM. But as for the other groups are concerned, like Al-Qaeda, ETIM, IMU, or the Tajikistan Taliban movement, etc. But vis-a-vis Pakistan, there seems to have a bit of hostile approach, maybe due to they want to engage with Pakistan or keep the Pakistan border volatile just for the political reason. Inside, they are looking for recognition. Afghan Taliban are not recognized by the world, any country in the world, but they are not even recognized by their own people. So I think it may be their tactics to keep the Pakistan's enemy inside Afghanistan. One, two, to keep the border volatile, to keep the border hard, just to get sympathies from their own internal anti-Pakistan political or what you call it, nationalist Afghan elements. So that is the case too. I think I agree with this point that we Pakistanis need not look to others, whether the American will come and they will help us, or the Afghan Taliban will come and they will help us secure our borders. I think this is our responsibility. So far, my point is that in Pakistan, I haven't seen a serious discussion on this issue, how to tackle this the menace of terrorism or the challenge imposed by the militants to Pakistan. So I think
Mr. Hassan Khan, beg your pardon for the interruption. There are so many other issues, there are so many challenges Pakistan has to face at the same time. We had given a decisive defeat to this particular menace. We did operations against these militants, these outfits, drove them away. They were flushed away from the Pakistan soil. They took safe havens over there in the Afghan territory. Now, when they're operating from there, having safe havens from there, it happens to be the responsibility of the Afghan Taliban. And it makes this thing very interesting. The Afghan Taliban, when we talk about the capacity of the Afghan Taliban, that they can't take a decisive action against the TTP as per their commitment in the Doha peace deal and towards Pakistan in particular. But on the other hand, it was the Afghan Taliban which drove away the international coalition forces. So at that time, they had the capacity to drive away the international troops who were fully equipped with the modern technology. And when we talk about handful of people of TTP, so the capacity of the Afghan Taliban comes into question.
No, I think Afghan Taliban have their own story to tell, and they are telling it time and again, calling the TTP as internal matter of Pakistan. One. Two, my point is that when we Pakistani ourselves are not that serious in handling this issue, because this is not just a new one. For the last 20 years, 2 decades, we are facing these acts of terrorism. The whole society is militarized. You know, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is too much exposed to militancy, etc. So I think we need to come up with a national policy. I think asking Afghan Taliban to do favor, they will never do it. As far I know the Afghan psyche, as far I know the Taliban, I think expecting any favor from Taliban against the TTP or other religious militant group, I think we will be asking too much from them. At the moment, I think yes, the international community is with us. But instead of waiting for the support of international community, at least we in Pakistan, the political leaders, the diplomatic community, and the security leadership and the civil society, I think we need at least to make our own house in order. There are
Mr. Hassan, when your point is well taken.
When militancy came into Khyber Pakhtunkhwa 2 months back, our interior minister was saying you are exaggerating it. The Peshawar government spokesperson was saying that there is nothing like the TTP. So I think at least we have to realize that there is an issue, and the issue, this menace of terrorism, militancy in Pakistan, it is outgrowing day by day. In these hit and run approaches, like sometimes you open talks, sometimes you close it. The way we approach talks, I think no civilized country or a government will approach a militant in such.
Right, Mr. Janjua, please go ahead. When it comes to the question of capacity, Mr. Hassan Khan, your point is well taken. I'll come back to you.
I have to give you another dimension about this terrorism and about TTP. Why do we always think this has to be connected to the Afghan Taliban just because they've shown their allegiance? Look, we have to look at this in a very, very deep analysis. TTP is getting funded from somewhere. Do you really believe Afghan Taliban are giving them the money to fund to operate inside Pakistan?
The role of the peace well is that you're alluding to?
The money to TTP is coming from somewhere else. It's coming from our eastern borders. Because the Taliban in Pakistan, the TTP, they can be easily bought by people on the eastern border. Because the people on the eastern border, and you know what I'm trying to say, they are not interested in peace in Pakistan. They want to be the spoilers all the time. And they did it last time when the New Zealand team was there. This time when the New Zealand team is here, this incident happening again is because somebody does not want international peace events or sporting events to happen in Pakistan. Taliban in Afghanistan may not have that interest, but somebody else has the interest. We should look into that dimension and explore any connection between the TTP and the people on our eastern border. And that should be explored, because I think If at all any terrorism is happening inside Pakistan, it is because of the funding.
There was a
coming from-
clear-cut dossier by the Pakistani authorities shared with the international community regarding so many terrorist activities that took place in Pakistan on Pakistani soil, and India directly being involved in that, and it's being state-sponsored, and the serving raw operatives have been caught red-handed from here. So what needs to be done in that regard? What the international community needs to do in that regard in order to impress upon that eastern neighbor of Pakistan that, look, this is not going to happen?
Again, I'm going to stress, do not rely on the international community. We've done military operations in the past, and we've done great job in rooting out these terrorists. We will continue to do that, and intelligence-based operations have done great results. Pakistan Armed Forces have done a great job in the past. We'll continue to do that. However, if you say it's going to be completely impregnable, that's not going to happen. Somehow, somewhere, these guys will try to infiltrate. But what we want to do is, we want to keep our focus. We should keep our focus. Who's the enemy? They are using these local operatives by paying them. They can be bought easily. Yes, we have to engage in dialogue with the Afghan Taliban, and we have to continuously impress upon them that your borders should not be used for sending any infiltrators into Pakistan. However, we know that even if they agree to us...
Okay, Mr. Janjua, here's the premise. If the TTP continues to operate from the Afghan soil, then there are two questions which are associated with the Afghan Taliban, their capacity and their will. When it comes to the capacity, the similar question that I asked Mr. Hassan, when it comes to the capacity, they defeated the international troops. What they claim, they drove them away, which were equipped with the latest modern technology and the great prowess that they had. Now, when we talk about TTP, even they are being funded from that side of the border, from the eastern side of eastern border of Pakistan. Don't you think if the Afghan Taliban can drive away the international coalition troops, so they can take a decisive and a concrete action against those militant outfits, especially the TTP, whether it is being financed from India?
They can, to a certain degree, they can take action. However, again, why should we wait for them? What if they don't? And they are not actually. We have to put our own house in order and do our things ourselves. And we have given them a clear message. Look, this is what we could do. If our talks are failing with TTP, we've killed 25 of them in Bannu the other day. And we've given them a message that if you think you can take people hostages, we sent this SSG guys and we took them down. We lost 2 of our brave men there, but that's a price the nation has to pay. Right. We are very sorry for the loss, but we are giving them a clear message. We will not take this for an answer. We are doing what we can. International community, when you said about the Indians, we know it, the response for India, the international community's response for India is not the way we expect it to be. So should we wait for the international community?
Right.
We'll have to take things in our own hands and do it the way we want to do it. And law enforcement and the armed forces have done a great job in the past, and they'll continue to. At the same time, the foreign ministry and the diplomats will continue engaging with the Afghan Taliban.
Right, Mr. Hassan Khan, when we talk about in specific to the role and the responsibility of the international community, and then we often hear that it is our own responsibility to set our own house in order. It was Pakistan, the front-line ally on the war on terror, serving the purposes of gaining international peace and security of the international community. Pakistan had to pay huge prices in terms of loss of lives as well as to the losses to the economy as well. Now, when there is a threat to Pakistan and it requires the understanding and the support of the international community, so why don't we see that sort of a concrete action from the international community when specifically when we talk about the role of our eastern neighbor India in spoiling peace in the region?
I think that, look, this is very unfortunate that Pakistan's commitment or Pakistan's role, which it played in stabilizing the region, on this 22 decades of anti-terror war in Afghanistan. But unfortunately, we got a bad image during this time. We were repeatedly called as the accomplice. We are supporting the elements who are fighting against the Kabul government or the international community there. This is very unfortunate. We couldn't cash it on. We are a failed marketeers, I think. We can't sell that we lost 80,000 lives in the war on terror. We got a very we did it at the cost of our reputation. And two, we lost billions of dollars. We lost flora and fauna in the entire country in this war against terror. But unfortunately, we are still called as collaborator of militants or those who are fighting against Afghanistan. This is very unfortunate because the reason is. If you help your own self first, look, we come up with a national action plan, and I will ask you, what is the fate of national action plan? After 8 years, again, we are dusting off the files of national action plan. This is a tragedy with Pakistan. If we are serious, I think, internally, we come up with a national narrative that the militants are the enemies of the country, whether they are using the religious narrative, whether they are using the nationalist narrative, any narrative. Unfortunately, as I told you, that today the capital city of Pakistan is headed by.
Mr. Hassan Khan, your point is well taken. Expert Afghan Affairs joining us on Skype. Really appreciate your time. And we were joined in the studio by Mr. Yasir Janjua, Senior Analyst. Mr. Janjua, thank you very much for your time, also for being on Views on News. Let me conclude today's discussion. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif had earlier said that the writ of the state will be established at all costs and no one will be allowed to derail hard-earned successes in the war on terror through sacrifices of the armed forces and the nation. With this, we come to the end of today's Views on News. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.